That on. Input level is good. Output level is good. So do a quick introduction. So our guest this week is Allan Schwartzberg. Now, Allan, you were a studio musician. You're a drummer, studio
Yep.
musician through the '70s,
Yeah.
based out of New York. Who are some of the people you've had a chance to play with?
In the studio,
Yeah.
it's just a little easier to. It's just about everybody,
Right.
everybody that I really wanted to, except Steely Dan. I have never worked with Steely Dan. I know the guys, but I've never worked with them. Wish I would have actually. Maybe it's not too late. Uh, but I've had a lot of enjoyable sessions, many sessions. I got people are sending me cards and photos rather of sessions that I barely remember. Um, I don't know if you remember a singer named Bert Summer. You remember
Mm-hmm.
who?
Oh yeah.
So, but that was a really fun session, and I might after we're done, I could
Send over
send
the
you
picture.
send you the picture. It's very cute. Um, let's see. Where can I
But
begin?
let's just you're sort
You
of
know,
know in the business you're known as they had this term a ghost musician. So you've played on all these albums and people might not be aware of it.
yeah, I know. It's the Kiss albums. I think there's credits on there.
I think,
So
but they came out way after, I believe.
that's right. That's right. And I do remember Gene telling me, I think, well, no, we wanted to think it's the band playing, so you got to understand that. And I guess I do. I don't know if I ever told you, but I did an album with Tito Puente,
Oh, nice.
and it was a whole album, and I felt good about this one. You don't always feel good about the work you've done. You feel like you could have done it a little better most of the time.
Right.
This time I felt really good about it. I could hardly wait to hear it. And I hear this thing coming on the radio, and I said, "Oh man, that sounds really good. That's great." And I said, "I wonder if that's yes, it is. It's the Tito Unlimited album." And I ran out and bought it, and I opened it up, and it said Tito played all instruments.
That's got to be hard. That's
God damn it, man! And I actually that night I found out where he was playing. I said, Tito, what the fuck, man? Why did you do that? He said, man, sorry, man, it's not me. It's the record company. They want to make a big deal out of me playing all the instruments, so they put it down. I have no control. And it's true that
it's true.
the labels dictate what they want it to look like. And but
Especially back then. Now we're here, of course, obviously to talk about Kiss.
sorry.
We're here, obviously, to talk about Kiss. But just before we get there, uh, what is Allan doing these days? Are you still doing the whole studio musician
You
drum,
know,
or
Mitch. I would love to do what I was doing because what's not only is it great fun to play. I realized that I enjoy. I think I enjoy recording most of the time more than I do playing live
right?
because when you record, you can really get it to sound the way, and it's a little cheating, but you can get it to sound the way you want it by fixing a part here and there. But I love the process. I love the camaraderie. The hang is great. Lately, I'm doing a bunch of producing. I did. I think that I did a B.J. Thomas album. I think
Mm-hmm.
about that. I spoke with Mac Rebenek, Dr. John, about producing a song for him. He said people send him songs all the time, and he just doesn't. He says the song you sent me is the first one I've heard in a long time that sounded like it's worth it.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to maybe producing something with him and playing on it. Of course, I always invite myself to play on my own sessions. Um, and the studio work in the city is down to a very few gigs, man. It's very, very few.
Now, by the city, you mean New York, of course.
New York City, yeah. New York. LA, it's the same thing. It's pretty much the same thing. It's people have studios in their homes. They're tapping away on
Garage band and all that wonderful stuff.
Yeah, they all have equipment. It all sounds cool too. It sounds decent, and the samples are excellent. Maybe they'll get a drummer to come in and you could just come in and play some hi-hat and cymbals, along with their program and swish it up and make it sound like it's very close to being real.
Huh.
I just do whatever I can do. My partner and I, Bob Mann, is not my life partner, my
business partner.
Business partner, who's a great guitarist. You may have known. You're Canadian, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Bob is a Canadian lived there for about 12 years in Toronto, and we're producing a Russian artist that nobody knows about, who just finished an album out in Los Angeles with Pat Williams and all the guys out there. He's paying for it himself. There's a lot of that going on. Hey, I want to do a record with all you guys that have played on all these records. And what we are going to do is have him sing with almost the whole album, sing with guests.
Yeah.
And these are all the people that he admired. I was thinking of calling it He's Russian, and I was thinking of calling it My American Idols. And
that's fun.
And singing with them, and it'll go out to the Slavic countries and maybe make some noise and make some money and stuff. Otherwise, it's like whatever anybody calls, I'll do it. I just did a session last week for a writer named Philip Namenworth. He used to be in Elliot Randall's band. I don't know if you know that name.
Yeah.
He's a local keyboard player. In fact, he wrote the song that I sent to Dr. John.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Great songwriter. So he's got a studio in his house, like everybody does. And I went over there and played, and that was fun. It's not the way it used to be, man. It used to be. I still have some old registered date books, and they used to be black. The whole book was black, and filled in with 4 dates a day. Literally, I would do at least 4 dates a day. Many weeks of the year, 20 dates a week.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, many different different things too.
So,
like two jingles, 2 record dates a day, almost always.
Now you mentioned a Bob from Toronto, so let's talk about another Bob from Toronto, Bob Ezrin.
Mm-hmm.
Most Kiss fans now know that you played on that sort of famous disaster of an album called The Elder. That a lot of Kiss fans have a hard time with it, but let's go through it. First of all, how does Bob contact you? They're doing this stuff with the new drummer Eric Carr. Why do you get the call?
Well, I got the call because Bob was. I got the original call. Go way back with when Bob was producing Alice Cooper,
right?
And I had never worked with him. Friends of mine, Tony Levin, the bass player, said, "Hey, I just recommended you to Bob Ezrin. You expect a call from him." And John Tropez said, "Yeah, just got a call from Bob Ezrin." And I said, Tony Levin just told me about that. So if he's looking for a drummer, recommend me. Whatever. Anyway, finally he called me and said, "Hey, I'm doing this Alice Cooper record at the record plant. Do you want to do it?" I said, "Yeah, definitely." And we hit it off great. I had a great time playing with him. I think I told you before, he's the only producer that could walk around the room, pick up your instrument, sit down, and play it. Play the part that he's hearing. Hey Al, why don't you try this beat? Boom. He actually played it. He actually played the part himself. And then later on in the session, the engineer got sick. He had to go home. Bob engineered the rest of the session. Acoustical engineering. The old days.
The old days. What Cooper album was that? Because I forget right now. It was after Welcome to My Nightmare, I think, right?
Welcome to My Nightmare. There's Lace and Whiskey.
That's the one I'm thinking about. Yes.
And it was then after that he asked me to play on most of his stuff.
Right.
We did Gabriel. One record I couldn't do with him that he did was
The Wall.
Tim something, the guy who played in Annie, the movie Annie. Great English singer. He played the male lead, the evil guy.
Yeah, I'm blanking on that one, but
you definitely know.
I'm sure if as soon as I look it up on Google in a second, I'll know exactly. But right now,
Tim Curry.
That's right.
Tim Curry. Okay, so I mean, I did almost everything for Bob. Tim Curry's album conflicted with I believe it's conflicted with the guy from The Who. Help me with this.
Pete Townsend or Roger Daltrey?
Daltrey's album. So I'd rather do Daltrey. No, it was Gene's. It was Gene's solo album at the Manor. That's
you're right. I knew you were on a solo album. Let's start there then. How do you get the call to get into Gene stuff? Was it Bob who recommended you?
That was not Bob. That was. Now I'm going to jump backwards. But I did a Cooper album. I did some of the Schools Out album, and with Jack Richardson, who worked with him.
Out at Nimbus 9.
The solo albums were Sean Delaney, a guy named Sean Delaney, who was really immensely talented guy, who designed the makeup. Believe it or not, designed the makeup. Wrote a lot of the songs. He produced 2 solo albums. He produced Peter Criss's and Gene's solo albums, and I played on both of those.
Right.
With Gene, we lived in a house. We lived in a manor house with his girlfriend at the time, Cher.
Right.
Who was his girlfriend. Cher and Chastity, who is now not Chastity.
But Chaz.
Chaz. Sweetest little girl. And in fact, I saw Cher on a Letterman show I was doing, and I reminded her that the very first time Elijah ever hit a drum was my drum at that manor house. And the little boy, walked up to my drum without being told what to do. Did I tell you this? I probably did. He steps on the bass drum and then hits the snare. Bass drum, snare, bass drum, snare, without anybody telling him how to. It's like genetic memory or something.
It's programmed into him. Now, back then in the 70s, Gene was the demon, and there was the blood, and but you're telling a different story. So how was it being around Gene in family life? Gene is
an arrogant guy. But he's a warm guy. He's basically he's a sweetheart.
Right.
He tries to play this game of arrogance every once in a while, which you could see on TV. Sure. You could see him doing it on TV. He's like smart alecky, but I think he's a good guy. And we went through a period with Gene early on in the sessions where we were living in the same damn house, and he was calling piano player, piano, hey, drums, until we said, okay, come on in here, Gene, for a second. From now on, it's names. We all have names. Come on. We have breakfast, lunch, and dinner together. We all live in the same house here. So let's call each other by the names. And you're right, guys. I'm sorry. I got carried away. But it's a lot of fun, man. And the manor house was like a mansion, broken up. With I was in a snooker room, in a playroom, in a den, kind of. This is an old stone manor house with stone walls. It sounded incredible. Piano down the hall, all the way down the hall, 65 feet away. Everything linked up with phones. And it was a lot of fun. Cher was a lot of fun too. We see each other. I remember thinking, wow, that's Cher at breakfast here. not look too glamorous here at breakfast.
Let me ask you, why did Gene have the band living with him? Was it because he thought it would give the album a more cohesive sound, or was it just cheaper?
Sean, it was Sean's idea.
Okay.
It was like one of the early. Now there are studios now where they put up the band. They'll have facilities at Skywalker Ranch and other places. But this is one of the early forays into that. Have the whole band living. We'll all live together. We'll all play as one. It'll all add to the family feel or whatever.
When you listen back to the album, or when you listened to it when it came out back then, were you happy with the sound of it? Fans debate all the time. It's the best solo album. It's the worst solo album.
I thought it was good. I tell you the truth, Mitch. I thought it was good.
Yeah, I happen to enjoy
the
it.
Song "Radioactive."
Great song.
Yeah, I thought that was. I thought that had a shot. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I liked it. I liked listening to it. What did you think?
I quite enjoy it. I think it. People always go when he does "Wish Upon a Star." Oh, it's terrible, but I thought that was so perfect. I mean, he could not have done that in Kiss as the Demon.
Right.
His own solo album. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
And, Radioactive, Tunnel of Love, those were great songs.
Right. Tunnel of Love, right.
And you've got Rick Nielsen of Cheap Trick that came in and did a spot, and Joe Perry that came in and did a spot. I mean, what more do you want?
I know.
You got a Kiss guy, a Cheap Trick guy, and an Aerosmith guy. That's perfect.
Yeah. Now, who's the engineer on that? Do you remember? You're great at this stuff.
I don't remember.
Really good engineer, and I lost touch. Really good guy too. I lost touch with him.
I could look that up real quick. While I'm looking that up, you also got the call to do the Peter Criss solo album, and
right.
Well, Peter Criss is a drummer, and you're a drummer, so. Did you feel weird about that? Were you like, well, what's this about? Hold on a second here. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see. Who do we got here? Backing vocals, Tunnel of Love. No. Oh, we got Mitch Weissman that was on that too. I forgot about Mitch. Sean Delaney, co-producer. No, I don't have an engineer listed here. But let's go back to Peter Criss. He's the drummer in Kiss, which, if you remember, 1978, 77, when you were doing this album, was the biggest band in America, if not the biggest band in the world at that time.
Exactly.
And he's the drummer in the biggest band in the world, and he calls in a drummer. So
I know, but he was cool about it because I think he was okay because he was singing on it.
Right.
So he cut himself some slack about that. Like I think, just like Phil Collins will not play drums on everything. Maybe
okay.
He was very cool about it. He sat next to me on the floor when we played. And maybe his time. The time has got to be really on the money on the records. You can't get away with loose time. I'm not saying that he has loose time at all, but he's great. He was great on stage and all that stuff, but I do a different thing, and it's a more precision thing that has to be for records. So
that's one thing I guess that I guess people who haven't been in the studio before don't understand. On stage, there's a sort of vibe and a rawness, and you go with the flow.
Right.
But a lot of bands bring in ghost drummers because they have to be in the pocket. They got to be right on time. It's got to be very precise. It's a completely different beast.
Exactly right, man. And the difference between nowadays and those days is the young drummers nowadays are growing up with drum machines, playing with drum machines, playing with programs, playing with loops.
And clicks and the whole thing.
Now they're much more relaxed and that's what you mean by playing in time. Okay, I mean, it's got to be all even. You can't get excited going around the corner doing a drum fill. You got to keep the tempo the same, So it's different, and there's less of it for me to do because the drummers in the bands, as we spoke about before, weren't that great at it. They weren't that great at being precise. They were much better at live. So
and that's the one thing. You look at Neil Smith and Alice Cooper on stage. an absolute joy to watch. I mean, he's got a million drums. He's got his arms flying all over the place. But maybe that doesn't translate in a studio. Who knows?
Didn't translate. And he's the guy. He's one of the guys that I don't know how to put it, but he's one of the guys that did not realize that there wasn't him on some of the tracks.
Yes, I know. He'll debate me on that for forever.
Cut this part out. But who told me that is Dick Wagner told me that. And the other guitar player with Cooper,
Glenn Buxton or hold on, I'm blanking. Steve Hunter.
Steve Hunter, right? Steve Hunter. Yeah. They said, the guy was like kind of grooving on the track, and I don't know if they ever told him it wasn't him, or because I didn't get credit on that.
Yeah,
but they knew.
And there's another one now. We're getting away from the Kiss world for a second. That I interviewed you once, and you mentioned playing on a Cheap Trick track, and
boy, what a stir that was, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I got a phone call from management saying they would sue me if I didn't retract it, and it is what it is. It
is. It just is. Whether they knew about it or not, I don't know. But I did it at Media A. I remember doing it at Media A, and I think it was. It
was like a dance remix or something like that.
It was a dance version, right? And one of the big dance mixers and producers asked me to do it. Whether they had got permission or not, I don't know. But it wasn't. But they had a real Cheap Trick track they were working with. It was a master. So somehow somebody wanted to get whatever, and it was done, and that's all there is to it. Right. I'm not saying that the guy couldn't have done it. It's just I got called to do a stupid date, and I did it. And,
right. And the other thing about studio musicians that people don't understand is that sometimes a band will record and then head out on the road for a 40-date, 50-date, 70-date tour, and the record company says, there's a little glitch here that we need to fix. I mean, you're not going to call a band back from Japan to do... I mean, we didn't have the internet then. You couldn't send the drum track through the internet. You had to get back to L.A.
Exactly. But this was a project that was outside of the norm, probably. I mean, I read all the dialogue that went back and forth. I think you sent it to me. It was interesting.
It was vicious, but
it got vicious.
Let's get back to Peter Criss. So the album comes out. It's sort of one of these much maligned albums. A lot of Kiss fans say, "Well, it's the worst solo album. It's not this." I like it. I think it's got sort of a rock and roll. Sort of like when John Lennon did that rock and roll album of his. It's sort of dirty street rock. It's cool. Yeah. It's not Kiss, but it's cool.
I had the same reaction with the Jimi Hendrix albums. I did some of the posthumous Jimi Hendrix albums, Some of them went gold, believe it or not, because Jimi Hendrix was on it.
Yeah.
The stuff was stripped away. What's his name? The drummer?
Mitch Mitchell?
Mitch Mitchell was wiped out on these. I could hear him wiped out on these records, and so was Jimmy, actually. But
Jimmy you have to keep.
You have to keep it, right. So, I mean, I did those. There are people that think that's blasphemy, But anyway, maybe they got to hear some Jimi Hendrix that they wouldn't have heard because nobody wanted. What was there before was unreleasable. Right. It was just not. It was not releasable. It was just all out of time, and it was crazy. But it was similar to that, though.
So let's move into now. We've done the solo. Let's get to actual Kiss records. Peter Criss leaves. Eric Carr comes in. They make a brand new album. And they say, "Hey, Allan, could you come play drums?" So tell us a little bit about that experience of recording I.